Morning, everybody. Here's what I was sitting here doing before going live with all of you today. I was practicing my pronunciation of names that I'm going to have to deal with on CNN. Andrei Melnichenko, Alexei Mordashov. Now, look at this. This is how it's put in my script for me. See that? I think I'd be better off because the brain, when you get something like that, at least my brain just sort of freezes. Gennady Timchenko. This is all, by the way, in the same setup for the same segment. Scheherazade. It's a segment about the oligarchs and their yachts. And what I'm saying aloud is a combination of the names of the oligarchs and the yachts. I'm kind of tempted to just cut out the names of the oligarchs because who the hell knows who they are anyway, except for Roman Abramovich, who owns Chelsea. Andrei Melnichenko, worth about $578 million, belonging to Andrei Melnichenko, who owns a fertilizer producer and coal company. Ooh, boy. This followed the impoundings of Lady M, owned by Alexei Mordashov, the richest man in Russia, and Lena, belonging to Gennady. Oh, shit. You know what? You should watch today just to see how I mangle these names. Gennady Timchenko. And Lena, belonging to Gennady Timchenko, who controls an oil exporting company. Further along, rumors are rampant that the secret owner of Scheherazade, seriously. They're spelling it out for me as best they can. I'm just a knucklehead. Scheherazade. As long as I just keep moving, no one will know if I screw it up. One more time. Andrei Melnichenko, Alexei Mordashov, Gennady Timchenko. And by the way, I'm a juvenile, as you know. Like, what's really running through my mind is don't burst out laughing, because it's like I'm in the, Holly Kong Junior High School still. Scheherazade. So, are we already at war with Russia? That's really the serious question today. That's not exactly what I said in the survey question, but that's what I put here for the purpose of our YouTube Live. Are we already in this? The hair splitting that is taking place with regard to what we will and won't do is very hard for me to understand. Admiral James Stavridis is going to be my lead guest on CNN today. He is the former Supreme Allied Commander of NATO. Good guy, straight arrow. This is exactly the subject matter that I will ask of him. And what I'm going to do is just summarize what we've done so far. The fact that we've sanctioned, we've given money earmarked for weapons, we've given weapons, we brought the full force of the world corporate community. Yesterday, we removed their most favored nation status, and on and on and on. But when Ukraine needs some air support and Poland right next door says, we will give you these MiG-29 fighters, but, we don't want to just hand them over. We're going to take them, we're going to fly them to Ramstein base in Germany, controlled by the Americans, and then the Americans can handle it from there. And then the Americans say, after seemingly having been caught unaware, because Poland made this announcement and Tony Blinken said favorable things about it, and then John Kirby, the Pentagon spokesman, a day later said, whoa, we're not up for this. Well, why? The question I'm really asking is why can we sanction, give money for weapons, give weapons, and do all those other intangible things, but not this? And the rationale, and you heard the president say yesterday, well, then we're in World War III. I wonder if Putin served notice that if those airplanes fly over Ukraine, those Soviet-made MiG fighters that are in Polish hands, if they appear in the sky over Ukraine, then that will be a provocative act by NATO, and it'll be formally game on. That's what I'm wondering. That's what I'm trying to understand. And I'll ask of Admiral Stavridis, why one and not the other is regarded as provocative. You have this bipartisan group of 15 House members who yesterday sent a letter to the president. One of them, by the way, for those of us who are in Pennsylvania, I note is Democrat Connor Lamb, who's been a guest on my program. And I also note that Brian Fitzpatrick, also a frequent guest on the program, two members of Congress from Pennsylvania, one an R and one a D, are part of this group. The 15 bipartisan House members follow 40 Senate Republicans who are saying pretty much the same thing, which is we got to step up our game and give more to Ukraine. So in the case of the 15 representatives, what are they saying? We need to provide additional defense material to Ukrainians. Stinger missiles will continue to be crucial in combating Russia's superiority in the air. The U.S. must also help supply more comprehensive air defense systems. We need to deliver the MiG-29 jets, and we also need to transfer the Su-25 aircraft to Ukraine as well. So what I'm really getting at is there seems to be a ratcheting up of this. I don't know if the administration will go along with what's recommended in this letter. Heretofore, they have not. Are we already there? Are we already there? And should we supply the weapons of war that are now being requested by both sides of the aisle? The survey question today over at Smerconish.com is asking exactly that. Should President Biden aid the transfer of aircraft and air defense systems to Ukraine? Should President Biden aid the transfer of aircraft and air defense systems to Ukraine? And that's where my focus is today. So it's perilous. I think that there's this narrative that has, for the last 17 days, has been the story, which is that the Ukrainian people are fighting valiantly, and they are, and that the Russian military has come up short in many respects, and it has. But the Times headline, I think, is accurate as well, which is this is a long slog strategy, and that Russia probably can't be stopped. And yet, I don't think long-term Russia could be successful. Do any of us think this would have been a good survey question today as well? Do any of us think that this conflict and this confrontation outlast Putin himself? I, for one, don't. I'm no expert, but I, for one, don't. It seems like it's largely driven by one individual, and it's Putin. And but for Putin, this situation wouldn't be taking place today. So the tripwire is my primary concern today. Where is that tripwire? And as I've asked to those of you who are here, are we already there? A subject that I got into on radio yesterday, and was the survey question of the day. Pardon me, that I'm going to introduce to the CNN audience. This issue of a global corporate response shunning Russia, but with a pretty big exception, and that's Big Pharma. Do we surrender? Does the West surrender? Does the United States surrender its moral superiority if we shut down the delivery, the manufacture to the best we can of medications and medical devices and ancillary products that the Russians desperately need? Because Big Pharma has been an exception to the sanctions and the boycott thus far. Sarah Varney from Kaiser Health wrote about that issue. I don't think it's gotten enough attention. I think it is fascinating. There's a quote in her piece. Just bear with me one moment. I got a lot of notes today. Holy smokes. Good show, though. Good guests. Yeah, in her piece, she quotes Scott Stoffel, who is the vice president for Abbott Labs, as saying, as a healthcare company, we have an important purpose, which is why at this time we continue to serve people in all countries in which we operate and who depend on us for essential products, some life sustaining. The story goes on to say that Abbott Labs manufacture and sell medicines in Russia for oncology, women's health, pancreatic insufficiency, and liver health. Should Abbott Labs stop supplying those medicines to Russians? Tough question, right? 60-40 said yes in the survey question yesterday. Jeffrey Sonnenfeld from Yale, another guest of the program, was quoted as saying that pharmaceutical companies that say they must continue to manufacture drugs in Russia for humanitarian reasons, these are now Sonnenfeld's words, are being misguided at best, cynical in the medium case, and outright deplorably misleading and deceptive, says Sonnenfeld, who's been tracking which companies have curtailed operations in Russia. Russians are put in a tragic position of unearned suffering. If we continue to make life palatable for them, then we are continuing to support the regime. Pretty hardcore from Jeffrey Sonnenfeld. Make life less palatable for the Russian people. Turn up the heat. So we shall do that today. This is interesting. I have often said on radio and television, you've heard me say this. I have often said, well, our differences used to stop at the water's edge. Meaning, those debates that we have among ourselves as Americans, if we have a common enemy, then we are united. I can't tell you how many times I've said that. Jeff Greenfield, in a piece for Politico that'll be a part of Smerconish.com today, says that is not true today, and it's never been true. That the exception is if we're attacked. So 9/11 and Pearl Harbor. But in every other instance in modern history that he's looked at where the United States is in a war footing, there's been huge disagreement. And we have not rallied around the flag. That's pretty incredible. So I'll have that conversation. And then to take me back to my pronunciations, Alex Finley is in Portugal, former CIA officer who has been tracking the Russian yachts, the oligarchs. So it's a good issue. It's an interesting issue. And it also gives us a reason to put on the television screen some fancy boats. So that's what I got cooking. Let me just see as your comments are scrolling by here. Are the Russian people victims too? Joanne Corley Schwarzkopf. Are the Russian people victims too? Great question. I mean, I don't have animus toward the Russian people. Some of those troops, I even feel sorry for to the extent they were duped. I have animus for Putin. So that's what makes the big pharma thing so hard. Do you shut down the liver meds, the insulin that Russians need? The theory from Sonnenfeld is, well, you do that so that there's more of a rebellion against Putin. I don't know. Vashna, it is certainly possible to equally recognize Putin as ruthless, brutal, a bad leader, and someone who is strategic and intelligent. Is he crazy or is he crazy like a fox? My answer is I used to think he was crazy like a fox and that everything was deliberative on his part, including when he would go bare-chested riding on a horse. Just a continual campaign of intimidation. But with the invasion of Ukraine, now I'm wondering if he's crazy like a fox and now crazy. Same question with Iran. Are sanctions against the government or innocent civilians, says Charles C. If Big Pharma denies the meds, it would only hurt the Russian people and support a Putin in rallying the people against the U.S. Yeah, Joseph Abrams, a really good point. I mean, maybe you're playing right into Putin's hands because Putin says there's an economic warfare that's been launched by the West against the people of Russia, and if now we shut off their meds, I mean, food is another one. Technology is another. Like, which of the levers? It's one thing to shut down McDonald's or Starbucks, but do you now take it to the extent of meds, technology, and food? I don't know, by the way, that we have the food ability. I'm just not knowledgeable about that. Yeah, Nancy says that might actually get his people angry at the West. Hey, did you hear the Ukrainian member of parliament that I had on my program yesterday, giving us the report from Kyiv? And she reminded me of a comment that I saw appended to a Tom Friedman column that I shared with Friedman a week ago on CNN that said, and this gets back to the central issue, which is, should we give Ukraine even more? And go vote at Smerconish.com. I'm sure there'll be huge voting in that today. But if we don't give Ukraine everything we can, in the end, when the dust settles, will the Ukrainians hate the Russians, or at least the Russian leadership, but also hold us accountable for what we didn't provide? Will they be disappointed in the West and the United States in particular? And will it be a total lose-lose? Ukraine won't look to anyone as an ally or a friend. Mike, yes, fan. This is war. This is war. Which gets back to the headline that I put on this YouTube question commentary, which is, are we already at war with Russia? I mean, we really are through proxies. Just how much more needs to happen before it's, and I'm not advocating for this. I'm asking the question, but not advocating for it. But what really needs to happen until there's a full declared world war between them? Tom Rogers, cutting off the meds over the line. We are better than that. You know what you remind me of, Tom? The torture conversation. Same kind of issues, right? Are we going to do whatever we need to do with regard to those that are the worst of the worst? And then some say, no, that's not who we are. If we torture, putting aside the efficacy of it, but that's not who we are. And then we're just like them. Catherine Upton, your newsletter finally dropped onto my email. Were we late today? Oh, guess what? It just popped up on my screen. It is 7:47 and the newsletter just hit. I am so proud of the newsletter. Hey, we're closing in on 70,000 registrants, and we're going to get there. If all of you watching share the newsletter with a friend and say, I think this is something that you would appreciate. A balanced news diet, 7 days a week, delivered roughly 7:30 Philly time. Roughly. Why is calling, don't scroll past me. Why is calling COVID the China virus xenophobic, but it's okay to blame Russian civilians, says Mumra7. Well, I don't think anybody's blaming Russian civilians, are we? Hey, here's a provocative question for you. And then I've got to go get my noggin powdered and get to work. Think about this. I'll be on this week on radio. Think about what I'm about to say to you. For the 2022 midterm elections, I won't go as far as the presidential because so much is going to happen. But for the midterm elections, which border issue matters more for our midterm elections? Ukraine, Russia, United States, Mexico. For our domestic political purposes, which is bigger, more impactful, will drive more people to the polls? Ukraine, Russia, US, Mexico. Have a great day. Share this with a friend. Thank you for paying attention to the YouTube channel. I could not be more proud of the 5 days of video that we posted this week, including yesterday. We did TC's social media report for YouTube, for this YouTube channel. First time you could ever watch us do that. And I thought it looked really great. I watched it myself last night and I was laughing as I was watching it. If you're on the East Coast, stay safe today. Bad weather blowing through as we speak. Hopefully this is the last burst of winter and warmer days are coming. See you, everybody. Thank you.